Welcome to Lip Service for Contractors. Here you'll learn what moves the needle in your business. With your hosts, Brigham, the deep thinker, Josh, the $100 million contractor, Zach, the confused millennial, Laura, the foreigner. Lip service. It's not about dictatorship. It's about leadership. It's not about duplication. It's about innovation. It's not about stuff. It's about your people. Strap in and get ready for some lip service.
And we are back with another episode of Lip Service for Contractors. You guys, we've got a phenomenal episode for you today, especially if you want to train your techs to perform at extremely high level. We have with us Mark Atherstone, who has just been in this industry for, who knows how long. Very, very long time. We'll get to that and much, much more in 60 seconds.
Power Selling Pros is the customer service coaching company for contractors. Their one-on-one coaching for CSRs helps contractors book at least 85% of their calls and wow more customers. And their group training for technicians helps you create a better buying experience in the home and close more sales. Visit powersellingpros.com to learn more about how you can make more money with their coaching programs.
Chances are you love what you're hearing on Lip Service for Contractors. And if you want to go deeper, have an actionable playbook, or just want to learn from some of the most successful and profitable contractors in the industry, check out Clover Marketing from Josh and Laura. They give away free, amazing information, tools, SOPs, scripts, and processes that help their family business grow to over 140 million. And those same tools have helped other contractors in the industry blow up their business and grow an average of 20% every single year. Check out growwithclover.com/free gifts. They update the free gifts section all the time, so make sure you keep coming back. Welcome back, Lip Service for Contractors. Mark Atherstone, thank you so much for being here with us. We're going to have Josh kick us off. Josh, what?
Let me just address the elephant in the room here. Brigham just said, who knows how long? I'm pretty sure Mark knows how long.
Yes, please.
He's been in the industry. But Mark is a good friend of mine, a personal friend, amazing business partner. He's actually, I'll let him go through his title and everything, but he works at the Wrench Group, so associated with Parker and Sons and obviously some huge companies across the United States, and really runs their tech training. And Mark has a really, I wouldn't say terribly unique, because everybody kind of does the same thing, but he's got a great twist and insight into tech training and really being one of the best wordsmiths I know. So Mark, I'll let you kind of introduce yourself real quick. And if you don't mind, kind of giving your title and your history real quick.
Yeah, I don't mind at all. Currently, I work as the Vice President of Residential Training for the Wrench Group. I started 36 years ago. Actually, I started in sales. And shortly after that, I realized that we needed to work with our technicians even 35 years ago. So I started working with technicians and trying to understand their side of the business a little bit more. I can tell you that, in my opinion, the real value of 35 or 6 years is the mistakes that you make that you can learn from, hopefully. Yeah, in my career, I've worked as the lead national trainer for service experts, 1 hour airtime, and a few other companies. So it's been a great journey. It's been a great business, and I'm glad I could be here today. Hopefully we can help some people.
So Mark, just a quick connection. I used to work at Service Experts as well a long time ago. Kevin Comerford gave me a job. He taught me how to answer phones about 20 years ago, as well as do some marketing here and there. It's pretty cool the way he does it. He likes to connect marketing and call handling. Does a really good job of it. But just wanted to say that, hey, we're in the same circles, my friend.
I think we all are.
Yeah.
long time ago. That's how I started. In fact, when I started this industry, it was Royal Hockley at Arctic Air and Kevin Comerford that gave me my first start in the industry. So really, really glad to be there.
Royal was actually my partner for, I don't know, about 8 years at Arctic Air up in Chico.
Is that right?
Far away from there. Yeah.
Now, Royal,
you had ownership in that business, didn't you, Mark?
Yep. Yeah.
Huh. So you worked for Brigham, or Brigham worked for you this whole time. Who knew?
I think Brigham coached me on its own without
All right. Well, I'd love to kind of go into it. Like, let's talk about really, because I think this is going to be a super valuable podcast for not only for owners and GMs, which is what we tend to focus on, but this is really good for technicians. I think like from an owner standpoint or a GM or a manager standpoint, the battle is always not necessarily getting them to sell, but getting them to open their mouth. You agree? Like if I could consistently get them to open their mouth, that's a win, even if they do it semi-poorly, because over time they'll get better and better at it, right? What's your secret like to scaling? Because now that you're a wrench group, like how many techs are you training, like technically training right now? I know you're not physically training every single one of them, but how many techs are in the wrench group right now that you're in charge of?
Wow. I want to say, I haven't looked at that number, but I want to say somewhere around like 1,500. I mean, there's a lot of technicians. I think what you said there's a lot of truth to that. You know, when we talk about indoor air quality, we tell the technicians straight up that the biggest challenge in indoor air quality is just simply remembering to talk about it. You don't talk to 10 people, we guarantee none of those 10 people will consider an improvement to their system with indoor air quality. But for every 10 that you talk to, at least one, sometimes 1.5 or 2 will actually do something, because we know people are interested in it. You know, they want to have cleaner pressure, healthier air. It's just getting the technician to talk.
Yeah.
So to your point, that's a big part.
Let's talk about like specifics of it though, because how we get them to talk, like there's a whole strategy of motivating them on, but like let's ignore the 1,500 tech point right now, because I want to talk about how to scale it too, because I think that's exciting. But if I got 5 techs, right, how do I get them to consistently open their mouths and talk? And let's focus on IAQ, but really it's the same for IAQ as anything else, correct?
Yeah. And you know, I've been thinking about this a lot lately, because even within our group, we have different levels of participation from each location, of course. For me, really, it's all about leadership and accountability. The biggest challenge that I run into when I did my consulting business with Train Your Tech and also here is getting support from leadership or having leadership take the path. And they got to know how to do it. You know, the best leaders that I know that have successful businesses, you know, they know the sales system, they know the tech system, they support it, and they hold people accountable to it. So, you know, for me, I've been thinking about that a lot lately. And so many times when a company could have done better, it starts literally at the top, you know, from having leadership be committed to the process. And I'd rather have somebody use maybe what I consider a mediocre or average process and really hold them accountable to doing it than maybe have the best process and just, you know, not support it. So I've seen that a lot lately in my career over the last 5-10 years. So I just wanted to share that thought with you, Josh.
I love that. So the success of a company is based on its leader. I have a lot of leaders that I talk to that say, gosh, all my techs do is go out and fix it. They just go out and they fix it. Doesn't matter if it's 30 years old, they go out and fix it. How the heck do I get them to start replacing as opposed to fixing?
It has to do with the nature of the technician himself, right? Most technicians are fix-it guys. They don't see themselves as salespeople. So I think the really key thing for people to understand is you've got to get the technician to the point where he understands that it's okay for him to talk about things that benefit the home and the system. Okay. So here's an example of the question. When is it ever good to have any dirt, dust, or filth in your system? And 100% of technicians say never. At that point in time, I'll say, okay, well, if you really feel that way, and if you believe in your indoor air quality products, then it is okay for you as a professional to let your client know that, hey, there are options that are available to help your system last longer, perform better, and maintain its efficiency. So it takes some time, but you have to get them to the point where they understand that not giving their client their options really isn't in their best interest. And sometimes I'll say, hey, look, if you had a technician and he went on a system and the capacitor's going bad, what would you think about a technician that didn't say anything about that to the homeowner? And the vast majority of the guys would go, well, that's not really good. He's not really doing his job. And I tell them, I said, well, it's true about a lot of things, whether it's, you know, a compressor saver, surge protection, or corrosion protection, or indoor air quality. You've got to get the tech to the mindset where it's okay for him to share information, which means it's okay for people to say no, but it's not so good for people to not have their choices.
Yeah. I think a big part of this too is like, you could wrap their head around, is this good to do? And like, they'll do it. They won't necessarily do it, but they'll understand that's better for the customer. But that's really not enough. Like, you also have to heavily incentivize them. You have to track, like, nothing is more frustrating like I have this conversation sometimes like, hey, in February, we focused on IAQ products. I'm like, okay, we're selling phenomenal airs, whatever, it doesn't matter, right? Phenomenal airs. Okay, awesome. How many did you sell in February? It's like, we did really good. We sold 10. I'm like, okay, how many do you normally sell? Well, we normally sell 8. It's like, well, then that was a freaking terrible promotion. He sold 2 more. This isn't real progress, right?
Yeah.
Like, you got to have the metrics to hold people accountable, and you got to incentivize them too. Mark was just at that mastermind event. Brigham actually attended too and spoke there. Were you there when Rick went through his IAQ as a retirement plan?
I was not.
Oh my God. So I'll share this. And this is Rick Hutcherson, if you don't know him, is also sales consultant, does more on the like comfort consultant side than technician side, but they both do it. Both are amazing, have really amazing techniques. But he had this one thing that just freaking blew my mind. And we've all done this before, but he took it to another level. And what he did is he started breaking down like a technician, if you're on a pay performance plan or you're heavily incentivizing team, is someone asking for a raise is a good thing. Because it's like, oh, I would love for you to make 150,000. Here's exactly how you do it, right? But he had this technique. He goes, hey, how many calls a day do you run? It's 4 to 5 calls a day. How many is that a week? That's 20 a week, right? If you were run 20 calls and you were talk about IAQ on every single call, how many could you sell, right? And the answer is 1 for every 10. If you're really good, 2 for every 10, right? So 1 for every 5. So you're selling between 2 to 4 IAQ products every single week, right? And then you start doing the math on it. Like, if you did that, how much would you make more in a week, right? And you start breaking down the math. And let's say for simple math, you get $200 for each one. You're making anywhere from $400 to $800 extra a week. Let's just make it simple. Let's just assume it's $400. $400 every single week. You time that times 52 weeks. How much money is that? Right? That's $24,000, right? So $24,000 a year, right? That's a lot of money. You just gave yourself a $24,000 raise. And his whole pitch is like, here's what I want you to do. I want that to be your retirement plan. Every time you sell an IAQ, I don't want you to touch that money. I want you to put it into a separate bank account and you're going to invest it. That $24,000 over 10 years, how much money does that turn into? It was $240,000. He goes, no. That's how much money cash it brings in, but that's not what that money turns into. Because if you were to invest that money, that $24,000 over 10 years, what does that come into, right? And that $24,000, that's 7% interest. It flips every 7 years, right? So it doubles every 7 years. So within 10 years, it's over $1 million just for selling IAQ, 2 of them a week. I've made you a millionaire. And that level of investment, like in actually breaking down, if you turn this into investment, which, a lot of techs won't, but that's not the point. Now, like just by $1 million instead of $250,000, which by the way, if I did that over 20 years, if I did over 30, right? It was such a unique, interesting twist. It was like, holy shit, I do everything up until that point. I was like, that's freaking brilliant. Like, can I talk a guy opening his mouth on every call for $1 million?
Yeah.
I feel like I can.
Yeah. Helping him focus on his future. Mark,
right. And it's a huge win for him too. Because like, Mark, you know this, right? And I've seen this done and I've done it as of recently. Like, and I'll talk about this tech, he's been working 10 years. And I was talking to him and his car broke down, his personal car. And he couldn't write a $10,000 check. He worked 10 years and couldn't write a $10,000 check. How terrible is that? Knowing everybody in that freaking room, like 9 out of 10 of them can't write a $10,000 check, right? But you're painting this picture like, can you imagine working another 10 years and not being able to write a $10,000 check? How terrible would that be, right? Guy worked 20 years. And like this is really digging into them, right? Without being directly digging in. But like you hit that pain point and then you flip them with that $1 million, like, holy shit, I can incentivize the shit out of them. And that's just IAQ. You could do that in all kinds of stuff. What's your secret to, I got to get these guys motivated by money somewhat, right? How do you tackle that?
I got to tell you, there's different ways to approach that. What I have found over the years is that what gets rewarded tends to be what gets done. So I'm a huge proponent of, you have to raise your price a little bit, but it's worth it. I'm a huge proponent of really compensating technicians when they install into our quality products. So for me, it's like, it's got to be worth it to them. So I kind of like Rick's spin on retirement. We tell people all the time that if you run a solid process, it's worth hundreds of thousands of dollars more income over your career, whether you know it or not. So good compensation for them. The other thing is getting their mind right. Some of that happens through training. So they've got to understand the products. They got to believe in them. We've done stuff before where we've just put the products in their home. For example, leak and air cleaner. We just put them in and just said, if you can install one of these in the next, 3 months, then you don't owe us anything. So, motivation through compensation is a big part. Making sure that the tech understands the product and then making sure that they know how to communicate the value of it. So I don't know that I really have any kind of silver bullet. It's just kind of, grinding out the basics and doing enough training so that the guys or the technicians understand what the opportunity is.
I think you said one of the silver bullets too, though, like you did in passing, right? But like, if you want a technician to sell something, they better have it at their house, right? Like that's such a small thing that so many people miss. Like IAQ is just one thing, but like if you're talking about upgraded thermostats, they better have an upgraded thermostat at their house. They better be able to pull out their phone and show that app to a customer and say, hey, I can mess with my rifle right now and turn the heat up, right? Or whatever, right? But they have to have it in their house. I think that's a super, super important thing too. I think this, and I love your opinion, Mark. I think one of the most powerful things, depending on what you're selling, right? But IAQ will focus on, because like you are the IAQ expert. Like I'm a big fan of like bring it in the house. When I say bring it in the house, I don't mean like, hey, I walk in the door, shake hand, here's an IAQ product, we're gonna put this on your table, right? But during the sales process, just bringing in the house so to force a conversation starter. What's your opinion on that?
Well, I'm a huge proponent, and my opinion is that yes, they need to have the products in their home, and yes, they need to have them on the truck so they can show the client. I do want to tell everybody this because this is kind of important in my mind. There's two aspects of this a lot of times. One is getting the system clean, and the other one is keeping it clean using indoor quality products, plus having, healthier air also. I'm a huge proponent of them bringing it in. I also recommend highly that we first take care of the equipment. So, and I'm going a little bit divergent here, but I'll come back and see here. When they have the product on their truck, then they don't have to make an extra trip. And a lot of technicians won't talk about it if they don't have it on their vehicle, which also means they're able to show the client. So what I tell them is, I recommend that whenever possible, you secure the cleaning first. Okay. So once they get the cleaning taken care of, then at that point in time, they can show the client the before and after pictures and then say, hey, give me just a second, I'll be right back. I want to show you some stuff just so you know what's out there. It's a more permanent solution instead of having to pay for the cleaning all the time. Now, that's one way to say, go get it. It's also okay that after you've done the cleaning, just bring the stuff in. There are some people that have thought, when you walk in, you put the anode rod, if you're a plumber, you come in with that, or you bring in and you drop the box off. The challenge I have with that is it just reeks right out of the box like, hey, I'm here to sell you something. And we should be focusing more on a relationship. So having the truck properly stocked, and look, if some guy after a few months isn't moving the product, then you whittle it down or you take it away. We've had guys tell us the truth up front. Hey, I'm never going to sell this, and I'm never going to install it. Okay, well then don't bother, putting it on his vehicle. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of showing the client the actual product that we can install in their home. It's much more real, and the technician can say, yeah, this is actually the unit that I would install in your home. That's my thought on that, Joe. I think it's a great idea, as long as the timing is right.
I love it. And I appreciate you sharing it. A couple of months ago, I had a heating and cooling company come in. I have a service agreement with them, and he finished his service agreement services, right? His 21 different points or whatever it was. Of course, I had to bring up the indoor air quality product, right? I brought it up, and he said, yeah, we've got those. And I said, sweet. How do I make the air I breathe in my home cleaner than a hospital? And he said, well, you're probably going to need a UV light and electrostatic filter. And I said, sweet. How many do I need? He says, well, you've got 2 systems. You're going to need 2. And I said, well, let's do it. Can you do that before you leave? He said, absolutely. I thought it was so great. But what's interesting is that technicians, in my opinion, you can tell me if you agree, disagree, but it seems like in general, they tend to treat the customer, even though you are a customer, you may not be your customer, right? And so they have a tendency to look at a situation and go, oh, they're not going to want this right now, or they're not going to want to afford this right now. fact, when I asked about the price, he said, it's $1,500 for the UV light and electric
For two?
I can do one of the, no, it's actually for each set.
Wow, that's
$1,700 for
pricing.
Well, hey, I guess I got a deal. The way he said it was, oh, well, it's $1,700 for each set. And I was like, cool, great. I didn't care, right? I wanted it.
Yeah, like he was afraid of the price.
Yeah, I wanted it. So how do you help them realize that people want this more than you think? They want it more than you think, and you can't treat every customer like you are the customer.
Yeah, well, I think you can look at it at another way too. It's like, it's not just the people who want it. You got to sort through the people who do and don't want it. So that's where we come back to that. If you just talk to 10 people about it, at least 5 are going to be interested and one will probably do something. So teaching the technician not to sell out of their own pocket, a lot of times that goes back to a training where you have to explain to people what it takes to run the business, why every single dollar of service, like 60 to 70% of it, needs to be pure, naked, unadulterated markup so that we can operate profitably and give them, vehicles and phones and insurance and, uniforms and everything that goes along with it. So it's hard for a lot of technicians, especially younger technicians, but part of that's a training issue. They've got to understand the value of what they're providing. And most guys intellectually know that you shouldn't judge, but everybody tends to do it. But also those same technicians will tell you, oh yeah, I prejudged one time and I was horribly wrong. It's happened to me so many times over my career that I just do my job, right? I don't worry about anything else other than doing the job. And part of doing the job is informing the client. So I've had a fair amount of success motivating technicians with the explanation that, hey, are you really being the best technician you can be if you don't let the client know what their options are? And training them not to sell out of their own pocket and understand the value of what we offer, that's a big part of it, along with compensating them effectively. So I don't know that that helped that much, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, it certainly does. And it leads me to another question, unless anybody else wants to stay on this topic, but I wanted to quickly ask, how often should you train your technicians? What do you advise on the frequency of training? Well,
I'm a huge fan of bringing in everybody every single day. Very successful companies have their teams meet every single morning, like maybe not on a Friday or something like that, but pretty much they're training 3 and 4 times a week. And one of the things that I like about that is that and it's not always possible, I get it, but when your technicians come into the office, you get to see them, you get to see where their head's at. If somebody's having a difficult day, hey, you can sit them down and chat with them. Hey, how's it going? What do we need to do? Help them get their head right. Also, the other aspect of that of training more regularly, I would say at least 2 times a week, you should be training your people. I mean, absolute minimum. That way you're delivering it in smaller increments also, Brigham. You're not giving them the proverbial fire hose, like learn all this stuff. And even on technician training, I've gone to doing that even more so. We might, instead of having a 2-day class, 8 hours a day, we might do 4 days with 4 hours in the morning and maybe even a little more to practice the role play and all that. So yeah, getting them properly trained, getting them to think right. I don't know if that helps you or not.
It absolutely does. So if they were to do it twice a week, and I know what some companies are saying, they're saying, oh my gosh, it's hard to do it even once a week. Well, how long should those trainings be for twice a week? Assuming that most companies are going to do it at least once a week, if we can get them to twice a week, how long should those trainings be?
It just kind of depends. I mean, as a general rule, most of these companies are training every day. So for those people out there that think, oh my gosh, it's hard enough to do it once, there's companies that do it every single day. Now, not all of them, but as you know, that was huge for the guys at Airtime in 1 hour, Terry Nicholson, John Abrams, or Jim Abrams and John Young, those guys all recommended super regular training. So I think I wandered away a little bit there.
That's okay. So half hour training, an hour training?
Yeah, I would say 45 minutes to an hour.
Okay, that's not a lot of time. That makes sense to me. 45 minutes to an hour, twice a week. If you were a betting man and you were to either bet on a company that's training twice a week and the other company that trains when they have time, right? Because let's face it, some companies, when they're really, really busy, they send a quick text out to their text and say, hey, have a great day, right? We got a busy day ahead of us, and they're rolling. Which company would you bet on as far as margin, highest revenue?
I'd bet on the company that does the training because, as the old saying goes, you are a lot more effective with a sharp axe than a dull axe. And training sharpens the axe. So, I always bet on the company that's doing more training because they're doing a better job of guiding their people.
Yeah. And I would give the point, things have changed too, right? I know companies that do train every day. I'm not necessarily the biggest proponent of it because it's not the hour. It's the hour and the loss leader and the driving people in. And there is a big cost to doing this, right? But a lot of people now that are doing this are doing like one or two a week in-house. And then they're doing daily training just over a quick Zoom or Microsoft Teams. And that's a half hour, 40 minutes, where they're doing it from their home. So there's no drive time and we can roll it out, or they can do it right down the street from their first call or whatever that looks like. It makes it more scalable. Like, you don't have to have them come in every time too. In fact, Mark, you do like meetings all the time that are remote now, correct?
Yeah, regularly. I think with technicians, it's more, if I'm doing serious training, like we're teaching technicians the proper value communication system, that takes more of a commitment. But oftentimes 15 or 20 minutes over Teams or Zooms can get your message across and give them something to think about. And I think it says a lot for the company too, when the company makes it clear that, and it's very true, when the company says, hey, understand the company can't do better without helping you do better. So how do we help you do better? And one of the ways that we do that is through training and support and teaching and holding accountable.
I agree with that. Yeah.
All right. So there's a question that every contractor, and I love what we're talking about here, because this is absolutely needed for our industry, but there's a question that keeps coming up at every event that I've been going to recently. And that is Brigham, what I need is how to find more technicians. How do I find more of them technicians, Brigham? How would you respond to that, Mark?
I think the first thing you got to look at is why you're losing technicians. So if you're losing technicians and you're having to replace them, I think you need to look in the mirror first and say, okay, what is it that we are or are not doing? Because if somebody's happy, then they don't leave, right? They feel like they're being treated, they don't leave. So I think the first thing you do is you take a look at why you have people leaving. And by the way, that exit interview should be done by an HR person, not by the manager, because the manager may not get the right information. HR is used to doing that. So that, for me, that's step number one. Step number two, without divulging a lot of proprietary information, I think one of the best ways to get more technicians is to incentivize your people to invite other technicians from other companies to come and join you. So now here's the thing. If you've got a good company, it's a great place to work at, then they should be more than happy to bring those people on, right? So if they're not doing it, then you start asking, well, is it just because you don't know anybody, or you're really not all that thrilled about getting people over here? And I've seen them do things where they pay an incentive. I've seen them do things where they bring somebody on, and for as long as that person stays, you get a spiff every month. I've seen some pretty innovative things there, but at the very least, you've got to stand out. And then I think also, Brigham, is making sure that the people that have the opportunity to come on board also know what the opportunity to succeed is. Okay. We know it's not always just about money. We know that money is like, 3 or 5 down on the list. So all those other things that are important, like recognition and feeling part of the team and all the other things they mentioned, if your culture doesn't match that, then you're just going to be caught in a nasty cycle of losing people, trying to find people. Start by retention and then build on that. If you can retain your people because they're happy to be there, you're more likely to attract other new people.
So let me ask you something real quick, Mark. Let's pretend for a second that I'm your best-selling technician. All right. I get all the best leads, and this is all in my own mind, right? I get all the best leads because this never happens, right? But I get all the best leads, and I am the most important person in that room. And you ask me to bring my best friend over who works for our competitor, and he happens to be the best technician there and closes most of the sales and takes most of the service calls and turns them into replacement opportunities. why would I bring him over to take my leads?
Maybe if you bring him over, the company incentivizes you so that you don't have to be on call. Maybe that's one way. It's a tough one because, everybody's playing what's in it for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's a tough one. And so if your opportunities are that limited where a guy feels like, hey, if I bring somebody else good on, I'm maybe not going to make it as much, then you got to provide something else or change it and make it better or figure it out somehow with the existing guy. There are some companies that will do that. Like I said, they'll pay you a fifth for every month that a guy stays on. Doesn't have to be a lot, maybe $100. They'll also provide maybe some other benefits. Like if you bring 3 people on, as long as those people are here, you don't have to be on call. So there's some interesting dynamics with that. And I'm not sure that I have a really great answer for that, but I think it does back into your culture a little bit.
Let me answer that because I actually learned this from Daryl, and it's a sneaky one, which I love, right? I like sneaky stuff. But what Daryl taught me, and I've used it since, is if I need to hire, especially like a comfort consultant, that's the ones who think the most that way, but technicians think that way too, is like, they'll be taking my calls.
Yeah.
What I'll do is I'll dial up the marketing for a week before I'm hiring someone and load them up with calls. Like, hey, if they're used to running 4 calls a day, for this week, we're running 6 calls. I got too many calls, guys. It is what it is. Right. And by the end of that week, they welcome somebody. They're like, oh, we have too many calls. We need somebody else. Right. It's sneaky, but it's actually really effective and gets them to buy, not only help you get that person, but a lot of times when they come in, they may not treat them the best, and that's not good culture. Right. But they're like, this guy's going to take my leads. They'll welcome them and help that guy out. Cause dude, you need to work out because I'm not running 6 calls for 6 months. You know what I mean? This can't continue like this. So it's a sneaky way of doing it. And then back to your question, bring them about new techs. I'll do a shameless plug here, but the reason that most companies don't retain well and don't recruit well is because they don't have a process. They don't have a system. They don't have a checklist. They don't have levers. If you break down the amount of time and effort they spend on recruiting, most of the time, if you really are honest about yourself, you do the math, you're spending minutes, sometimes hours, but usually minutes a month working on recruiting, right? I put together an ad. Hey, I hung up making parts house. I talked to my guys one time. It's just not the time and effort. And it's because you don't know what to do. If you need help with that, we have an amazing, we just won a big award actually for our recruiting and retention course, step-by-step how to do it. And just to Mark's point too, if you get a really great tech, but you can't retain them, you better have a retention system and process, not we're just going to be fun and good place to work. That's a piece of it, right? But you better have a plan on how to execute that step by step, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, shameless plug.
No, I love that. So I think the insights that we're getting here from Mark are fantastic. If there was one thing that just needs to be an absolute inside your, let's call it technician culture, what would be that one thing? In addition to the fact that leadership, right? In the beginning of this conversation, you're saying, look, leadership is absolutely paramount, more important than ever. And I love that you say that. I totally agree with that. In addition to that, how do you make sure that you build just a phenomenal technician culture inside your office, inside your team?
Well, technicians are an interesting breed because what I found over the years about technicians is that they don't like it when anybody's being taken care of or is taking advantage of. So, for example, if they feel like something's not right for the client, that bothers them, but they also don't like clients trying to take advantage of the company. So they have a huge sense of integrity and fairness that way. So my number one rule has always been to focus on, we only do what is in the best interest of each client every single time. Okay. And there's basically 4 things that are kind of key concepts that I reinforce. That being the first one. The second one is that stop pushing and trying to convince people. Stop trying to quote sell. Instead, let's focus on making recommendations that are in the best interest of that client. The third aspect of that is helping them understand the value of your company, what you provide. So step number 3 is to build what I call overwhelming value for each and every recommendation that you make. And then the last thing would be to ensure that the client is able to choose from multiple options that are written out so that the client can process it easily without flip them back and forth on stuff, get it written out. And there's a couple different ways to do that, but let the client see what their options are, not just here, because it makes it easier for them to process. So those are kind of the 4 things that I really stress in culture, because once the technician understands that his job is to help, and sometimes help is accepted and sometimes it's not, but I try to help them understand that it's never okay to withhold options or information from a client that could benefit from it.
No, that's a good point. That's a good point. I think we've covered a few things that I don't think any of this is like mind blowing, right? But like it's the basic stuff that drives results, right? And consistency and it's, I use this analogy a lot. A football team, right? It's not usually the team with the best special teams that win. It's usually the one who has the best blocking and tackling, right? If you're the best blocker and tackler, the vast majority of the time you end up winning. And this is kind of what we're talking about, is really blocking and tackling with your technicians. If you have one parting thought, like, hey, if you did this consistently, it would change everything for your technicians and you would have better training and they would open their mouths more or whatever, what would that be?
Well, for me, there's 2 thoughts that come to mind. Is that, number one, they have to see training as an opportunity to improve. In other words, it's like, oh, I have to go to training. Then your training isn't interesting or exciting. Okay. So the training needs to be regular and consistent and of a high value. And then the other part of it is just simply that the leader can't delegate this. It's just too important. So if you're the owner of the company, if I own the company today, I'm heavily involved with training my people. Okay. Because I want them to know what to say and do when they're in front of the client. And you can't abdicate that. You can't say, this is just my opinion. You can't say, well, you're the service manager, deal with it. You've got to have your nose in that to make sure that it's being done the way that it should be done, because when it's not, that flat out costs you revenue. Okay, so one way to look at training is, it costs me this resources and other things. And the other way to understand it is that if you make it meaningful and you hold people accountable and you make sure that you're involved with that they have good information to share so they can be more successful, in the field.
Awesome. I appreciate any parting thoughts, Brigham?
No, I think it's fantastic. I think those 4 steps, they're worth summarizing. Josh, if Mark, if you could repeat them one more time and then we'll close. How does that sound?
Yeah. Okay. So number 1 is company-wide and individually a commitment to always do what is right for each client every time. That's number 1. And there are occasions, like where I talk a little bit about the line in the sand. In other words, if I have somebody who says, hey, I have a 16-year-old condensing unit that burned up, but I want you to put a new compressor in that. Well, I know that there's like 5 things that can happen and 4 of them are bad. So based on the situation, there are times where I may say, hey, we're going to pass on that. And here's why. And not everybody, feels that way. And there are circumstances that require that. Maybe it's a rental, maybe it's being sold. Okay. That's, every situation is unique, but the focus on doing the right thing and holding your integrity at all times. That's number 1. Number 2 is focus on making recommendations and stop pushing and convincing and trying to talk people through it. Instead, focus on the value for your recommendations. Again, instead of just saying, well, you should have this or you should get that. That's better than nothing, but that's where training comes in, is to make sure that they're communicating value effectively. So number 2, stop pushing and selling, start making recommendations. Third one is to build overwhelming value for each and every recommendation that you make. Simple examples that the client can understand. You've got to make sure that the value is there. And you've also got to establish how your value solves the problem, because if the client doesn't perceive a problem, then no solution is needed. So that's number 3. And number 4 is essentially let the client choose from multiple written options and include financing as an option. Don't assume people want to use financing. Don't assume that they don't offer it every single time. So that's kind of the 4 basic guidelines that I like.
Great
Awesome.
steps. Love it.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time, guys. That's all we got, and we'll cut it off, and maybe we'll have Mark back on, because I thought that was really good information.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah. And,
thanks for letting me join. And
in the meantime, I'll let you guys go make some money, and Brigham, I'll let you end it. What else do they do?
Subscribe.
Oh yeah, subscribe, like, follow, make sure if you guys love this, which I hope you guys do, and you find the information valuable, please help us share it with the world. We're trying to change the world, and
That's
we're hoping
right.
you go do it too. Thanks,
Which
guys.
is our ending. Well done.
Thank you for listening to Lip Service for Contractors. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure to leave us a review in the App Store and don't forget to share with your friends. Ideas are cheap. Implementation is what separates the winners from the watchers. Go out and implement these ideas. See you on the next episode of Lip Service for Contractors.